Hello and welcome to AUN Labs. I'm Gatha and I will be walking you through practical machine learning using Python. Now, a brief introduction to Python programming language. It was developed by Guido van Rossum in late 1980s and he named it after a comedy group Monty Python that used to be telecast on BBC channel. It is a dynamic and interpreter based language and most commonly used version today are versions 2 and 3. There are many other flavors that are available of Python, such as Cython, which is the interface between language C and Python, Jython, that is for programming language Java and Python, Iron Python, Ruby Python, and MicroPython that was specially developed for microprocessors. Now, when we say Python is a dynamic language, what does it mean? A dynamic language determines data type at runtime rather than enforcing it. For instance, the language C or C++ or even Java. You have to specify int x equal to 0, and this is how the compiler or interpreter knows that I will be holding a value of integer. And same is the case with arrays and characters. Now, in case of Python, you can specify a variable and then assign it a value. For instance, in the example code, when we say x equal to, the answer is it's a string. So the interpreter will come to know that x is holding a value to a string, y is holding to a value of an integer. But once it has been assigned a type, a variable cannot be made to change its type. It has been enforced by the system. So the statement print x plus y is definitely going to throw you an error. Now, what issues are better caught by dynamic languages? There are no unchecked null pointers. There is no wrong order of static initialization or deinitialization because it is being taken care by the system. There are no dangling pointers, and there are always initialized instances. The memory that is shared by multiple objects is better released in such a system. Now, we also said that Python is an interpreter based language. So, what does it mean? We have a compiler and we have an interpreter. While a compiler goes through the process of generating a machine code, or in the case of a C language, class files and then object files, and then using them together to create a library or an executable, an interpreter would be executing the code line by line and running it. It checks for the keywords of the program, takes an instruction, converts to machine language, and moves to the next instruction. The given six features define the essence of Python. It is an interpreted language, it is free and open source, it has a large library which has been developed and maintained by a large number of developers. It is easy and portable to use. You can do procedural as well as object-oriented programming using it, and you can also develop graphical user interfaces. If we compare Python with other programming languages in use, it is more readable. It was developed in such a way that it maps to the general spoken language of English. So definitely less amount of coding is required. It supports procedural as well as object-oriented programming. It is extensible and embeddable to other programming languages, as I had mentioned in the first slide. For instance, we have Cython, Jython, Iron Python, Ruby Python. So it is embeddable to other programming languages. There are extensive libraries available for different functionalities. I will be covering them later on. It is platform agnostic. You can write Python code whether your system is working on Windows, on Linux, or on Mac OS. Now, some of the drawbacks of Python development is that being interpreter based, Python code runs slightly slower compared to other languages. It has been widely accepted for use in server-side programming, but not as such for client-side, again due to speed issues. Runtime errors might occur due to dynamic type allocation, and database layers have not been developed as well. Now, indentation is a very critical issue because there are no braces that are being used in Python. A case of 4, that is a tab, is used to define each of the coding blocks, and the programmer needs to be very careful about it. Why is Python being so widely accepted by machine learning developers? It is a simple language, so therefore it is a low entry barrier even for people who do not have a coding experience. Simpler syntax lets developers focus on more complex ML algorithms. There is flexibility of usage. It could be used as a script, as a procedural language, or as an object oriented programming language. It saves on the compilation time and effort. And as mentioned before, it can be combined with other languages. It has a great library ecosystem. There's an extensive range of well tested and developed libraries and frameworks, which we will be covering later on. These include NumPy, Pandas, Scikit-learn, Seaborn, Keras, TensorFlow. So these together provide a rich stack to access, process, and transform data, which is the crux of machine learning. It is platform independent. So your system could be running on Linux, Windows, or Mac OS. You would be able to work on Python. The generated executable does not require any specific Python interpreter to run. It has good visualization options such as Matplotlib, and much richer visualizations are provided by Seaborn and Plotly. It supports a human readable representation of data for AI and deep learning models as well. There is a large community support behind Python language. Being open source, resources are available at all levels of expertise. There are forums, there are developer groups, and a lot of material is available on the internet. Programmers can develop frameworks and publish them for use for others. Now, some of the top Python packages that you will be using for machine learning are, first of all, Matplotlib. It is a interactive cross-platform library for two-dimensional plotting. Then there is Natural Language Toolkit. It is a framework and suite of libraries for developing both symbolic and statistical NLP in Python. NumPy and Pandas are two libraries which we will be using extensively for machine learning. While NumPy provides multi-dimensional array and matrix processing, Pandas brings to table a high performance and easy to use data structure, which we will be covering now. Scikit-learn is built on top of Matplotlib, NumPy, and SciPy to implement data analysis and data mining tasks. Seaborn is a library that has been built upon Matplotlib and it provides rich visualizations for making statistical graphs. Keras provides a high-level neural network API capable of running on top of TensorFlow, CNTK, or Theano. SciPy, another popular machine learning library with different modules for optimization, linear algebra, integration, and statistics. PyTorch contains tools and libraries that support computer vision, NLP, deep learning, and many other machine learning programs. So developers can perform computations on tensors with GPU acceleration using PyTorch. TensorFlow, a very commonly known open source library for high performance numerical computations using data flow graphs. Now, each language has its own set of data types which are used by programmers. So, Python data types can be divided into two types, the primitive data types and non primitive data types. The primitive ones include Boolean, string, number, bytes. And you can see the allowed values under these. The number could be a type of integer, a float, or a complex. The complex number data type is exactly what we have in mathematics. It has a real part and it has an imaginary part. Coming down to non-primitive types, we have a list, a tuple, a dictionary, and a set. Now you can see I have marked data types into colors green and red. Green are immutable types and red are mutable types, which I will be covering now. So when we talk about a tuple is nothing but a list which cannot be modified during the course of the program. And when we talk about set, while it is mutable in itself, if you declare a variable as frozen set, then once the values have been assigned to it, it cannot be modified. Now, what is an immutable type? An instance of immutable type cannot be changed. When it is said that it cannot be changed, it doesn't mean that the value cannot be changed. It can be assigned a new value, but then this will cause creation of a new instance under the same variable name. So as we can see in the code example, we have declared an integer a which is holding value 1 and it is of type immutable. There is a concept of unique identity of a variable which in analogy with A language like C is pretty much like the value of memory location where the variable is stored. So this unique identifier shows that A exists with this unique ID. We have printed it and it's a certain value. Now we make a copy of A into another variable B. So B is equal to A results in B having the same unique value since it's pointing to the same integer. So if we print B, the ID is same and the value is same. Now we change the assignment. Now we change the assignment of immutable type A to a value 2. Now this will definitely not throw an error, but now if we print the ID of A, you would see it has changed to some other value, while B still holds the original unique identifier value and still pointing to the integer value 1. In the previous slides, we had discussed the major libraries that we would be using as machine learning programmers. And NumPy is one of the first libraries that any programmer should learn. It is a base n-dimensional array package. While we have built-in arrays in Python, NumPy comes into picture when we wish to reshape or access certain part of multidimensional arrays. As you can see in the examples, you can have a NumPy 1D array, a 2D array, and a 3D array. And the 3D array can be reshaped and accessed in the form of a 2D array, as we'll see in the coming example. So we see that how a NumPy array can be declared. A NumPy array can be created by importing the NumPy package and then declaring an array A equal to np.zeros and give the required shape. This would give us an array filled with zeros of the required shape. Now we see the code example of slicing an element access on a NumPy array. We have an initial array ARR which has been declared as a NumPy array of size 4 is to 4. When we slice it, for first two rows and alternating columns, we can specify sliced ARR equal to ARR, where colon 2 means the first two rows and colon 2 means alternating columns starting from 0. And when we print the sliced array, we see the first two rows with alternating columns. We can also access multiple locations by using an index array. We have used index array, which is accessing elements at 4 positions from the ARR array. Now you can see we have declared index array accessing the following positions 1, 3, 1, 2, 0, 1 and 3, 0 and printed them. Now we see another operation that is carried out on NumPy arrays, the reshape operation. We see the example of an initial array A which has been defined as having shape 3 is to 2 and we can reshape it into 2 is to 3. Now this reshaping is very important when you are working with neural networks which needs to have input vectors defined in a specific shape. We can also flatten this array into one dimension having 6 elements. So A dot reshape and we pass 6, it gives us a single dimensional array of 6 elements. Coming to pandas, another powerful library that can be used for machine learning programs. It is a Python package that provides fast, flexible, and expressive data structures designed to make working with relational or labeled data easy. We can see that two series which have similar size can be brought together into the form of a table and would be called a pandas data frame. We can understand it better using code. So first we create a data frame according to the example that we had given in previous slide. So we have series apples and we have series oranges which we have brought together into the data frame purchases, which can be seen in the tabular form on the right. The implicit indexes are there when the data frame is created. Now we wish to add another property to this table, that is the customer name. So we can simply add another index with the names June, Robert, Lily and David. So we can see that the index has been reset to the customer names and the values of the apples and oranges that were bought by them. Now we wish to locate a customer order by using their name. So to find how much apples and oranges June had bought, I can simply do purchases, which is the name of the data frame, dot locate. In the brackets, I would pass the customer name June, and it would give me the values of apples and oranges that were bought by the customer. We would understand the application of pandas to machine learning with subsequent coding examples. But what pandas brings to table is the alignment and indexing of data in the form of table. It helps us with pre-processing of the data. Multiple file types such as CSV, TSV can be read into a data frame, or a pandas data frame can be written into a human readable file. The data frames can be merged and joined. It provides an optimized performance, especially for large size data sets. There are options to visualize data in a pandas data frame using built-in operations, and we can define and perform cell-wise, that is row-wise or column-wise operations over a whole data frame, thus saving a lot of effort and time. Now getting started with Python, it is very simple process. You need to download the Python package and install it according to the documentation available on the net. There are a plethora of rich There is a plethora of rich resources on Python support. You can get started by where to download, that is www.python.org. You can check the best version that you need to install and set it up for your system. I would suggest that you install Python 3.8 for your Windows or Ubuntu or Mac OS system. Now let's write our first machine learning Python program. We would be working on the IRIS-FLA dataset that Dr. Mayank Sharma had discussed in his first presentation. So the dataset comprises of 150 records, and this record has 5 attributes: the petal length, the petal width, sepal width, and species. And these 5 attributes are mapped to 3 types of flowers. Those are Centosa, versicolor, and virginica. So these are the classes that maps to the 5 attributes. We would be first importing the required libraries. Then we would be loading the dataset from UCI machine learning repository. We'll summarize the data and we'll visualize, analyze, and make predictions on it. So first of all, let's print the versions of libraries and the Python that has been installed on my system. I would suggest that you first create a Python environment on your system. This helps in segregation of libraries, their versions, and their dependencies according to what program you would be running. So I had created a working environment for my examples using this command conda create, followed by the environment name that you wish to give. It could be anything. I could say AUN example and the Python version that I wish to work on. So I can say Python equal to 3.5. So it would run it like this and set up my environment. It would be telling me all the packages that would be part of this working environment. Now it would tell me how to activate a working environment. Since I've already created a working environment for myself, I would be activating that one. So I'm now into AUN environment. My notebook, which prints out the version of Python, SciPy, NumPy, Matplotlib, Pandas, and scikit-learn. I've already placed this notebook at the given location. I do an ls, and we have these two scripts. So first run the script, which prints the version numbers for Python and the major libraries. So as we can see, my Python version is 3.56, SciPy is 1.41, NumPy is 1.184, Matplotlib is 3.0.3, Pandas is 0.253 and sklearn is 0.22. Now, knowledge of version numbers for Python and the major libraries is important because of existence of dependencies between them. It could be that a certain version number of matplotlib may not be compatible with a certain version of SciPy. So in case such an error occurs, you can print out the version numbers and see if there is any mismatch. Now we'll see how we are going to handle the ARIES dataset and run multiple machine learning operations on it. So this is the hello world of the machine learning program. We have imported the major libraries that we would be needing for our work. First of all, we load the dataset from the UCI machine learning repository. We read the CSV into a data frame named dataset. It is a pandas data frame as we had seen in the present. It is a pandas data frame as we had seen in the previous slides. So first of all, we would get an idea of what is the shape of that data set. If you visualize a table, this would give the number of rows and columns that this data frame would have. We can also take a peek into the data set by printing its head and specifying that I need to see 20 rows of it. When we say dataset describe, it gives us the statistical description of the dataset. We also do a class-wise distribution since this dataset contains three types of classes. It has Sentosa, Vericolor, Vesicolor, and Virginica. So we can see what are the sizes of these three classes. How many entries are there for each of these classes in the dataset? We can delve into the attributes of the data frame by using univariate plots. So again, we will be using pandas data frame operation plot and tell it to plot for each of the attribute using subplots equal to true. And these other attributes are for its representation. We would also plot histograms for each of the attributes to see what are their frequencies. Then we would delve into the interrelationships of attributes using multivariate plots. So we will be using the operation scatter matrix, which is nothing but an operation that we have imported from pandas plotting. So all these operations are already provided in the pandas package. So we were here, scatter matrix. After this, we would like to do some classifications and make predictions and see how well we can classify the three classes based on the 5 attributes. We would split the data set into a training data set and a testing data set for cross-validation using the operation train test split, which has been imported from sklearn library. You will see. Now in this, X comprised of the attributes which are needed to classify. Y is the name of the classes, which should be the output, the three class names. When we say test size is 0.2, it means that 20% of the data set would be used for testing and rest 80% would be used for training the models. And random state means that the sampling would be done randomly. We would be training 6 type of classifiers to see which one gives the best results for the given data set. So we have linear models like logistic regression, linear discriminant analysis, and non-linear classifiers such as K nearest neighbor, decision tree classifier, which comes under classification and regression trees, Gaussian naive Bayes, and static vector machine. So we would be running these 6 classifiers using the given data set. This is the for loop that we would be running on this array of models, and we would see which one would give us the best results using the cross-validation used from the training and test data sets. We compare the algorithms using the box plot of the accuracy that was computed for each of the model. As it was seen from the box plots, SVM, the static vector machine, gave the best results. So we then made predictions using the SVC model. And we would be seeing the results for this whole script now. So I'll be running the script. Pretty much similar to previous script. I'll write Python. The file name is iris. Let's say iris.pyb. So let's first see the shape and the peek into first 20 rows of the data set. So as mentioned before, we have 150 rows and we have 5 attributes. So 5 columns and 150 rows. A peek into the top 20 rows gives us an idea that these are the attributes for Iris setosa class of flowers. Now we have set dataset describe for statistical description of the dataset, which gives us this output. After that, we had specified the classes for the dataset. So these three are the classes, and we can see that the dataset is divided equally among the three classes. So we have 50 rows each for each type of the class. Coming to the univariate plots of each attribute, so this is the box plot of the 4 main attributes. You can save this value. You can save this figure on your system. Now if we close it, we'll see the histogram of the attributes. So this is the histogram of the 4 major attributes. You can see 2 of them are following Gaussian distribution. Again, you can save this figure. When we see the script, this was followed by multivariate plots. That is the interrelationship between the attributes. So if we close this figure now, we'll see the multivariate plots. Since multivariate plots specify the correlation between attributes, the self-correlation gives us the univariate plots. And the rest are the relationships between the attributes. For instance, this cell gives us the relationship between sepal width and sepal length, petal length versus sepal width, and so on. Now the multivariate plots were followed by splitting of the dataset and training and testing of 6 classifiers, and we had tested them and plotted their accuracies. So next figure would be the accuracies of the 6 different classifiers that we had run. So this is the box plot. We have labeled them according to the classifiers. And I've seen the SVM gives the best accuracy. This one is almost as good as 1, but not 1. Now after deciding that the SVM model had given us the best accuracy, we made predictions using this model on the test data set that we had achieved from the splitting. To closing this figure, we see the results of the SVM model. So the model had made predictions with the accuracy of 0.96667. This is the confusion matrix that was the output. And we have also relied on precision, recall, F1 score, and support parameters to see how well the output was of the SVM model. I will be sharing the link of this code in the comment section, so you can try out this code on your system. So coming back to what we had planned from our first machine learning program, we had analyzed the data set and we had summarized the data. We had seen its statistical qualities and we were able to visualize, analyze, and make predictions on the data set. So to summarize this lecture, we had an introduction to the Python language. We saw why Python is relevant to machine learning programming. the major Python packages that we would be using for machine learning, how Python language can be installed and set up on your system, and we executed our first machine learning program. So I hope I would be able to answer your queries that you give in the comments section. I'm looking forward to further lectures. Thank you for your time.